Hey, good morning. Are we live? I can't see myself. Ah, we are live. Hello, good morning, Glasgow Girls Club. How are we all today? I hope everyone is absolutely smashing. Now, I'm just doing my usual and checking that I am actually live because, yes, I am. Happy days. Okay, today is Thursday, the 24th of April. Please give me a hashtag live if you're watching this live. And please give me a hashtag replay if you're watching this on the replay. And please let me know whereabouts you are. I am in partly sunny Cumbernauld, coming to you from my home office for this month's Fertility Mentor chat, Q&A, masterclass, blether. So, for anyone I haven't met here before, hello, my name is Claire Innes and I am the founder of the Fertility Mentor. The Fertility Mentor is a business that coaches women who are struggling to conceive or struggling to stay pregnant. And I do this through a variety of methods: nutrition, mental health, body, so exercise, balancing out hormones, basically as holistically as possible. I'm not a doctor. I work alongside medical teams and I help women optimize the things that they are in control of to help them actually start conceiving or to minimize their risk of miscarriage. Now, I am a local girl, born and bred, live in Glasgow. I am delighted to offer free services to the Glasgow Girls Club. I've got a very special place in my heart. So these masterclasses are completely free. If you have got something that you want to ask, but you're not really comfortable posting, you're very welcome at any time just to drop me a DM, either on my private page or via the Fertility Mentor. And I also offer a free initial consultation for all Glasgow Girls Club members. So today we're going to be talking about fertility. We're going to touch a little bit on National Infertility Awareness Week, and then we're going to move on to the Q&A. So we've had a few questions asked over the last month, and I do tend to kind of jump in on the comments, but these ones are quite meaty, so I thought I would address these actually on the call. And then we're going to talk a little bit about miscarriage, which is a bit of a taboo subject. It's a bit difficult to talk about, but I'm seeing it coming up more and more in the comments, and I actually hate that it's a taboo subject. It is so very, very common and it is so very, very heartbreaking. And obviously, my overall goal is that they just don't happen. But until we can get there, I think we need to talk about them. We need to normalize it. We need to help people understand how common they are. So I'm going to be touching a little bit on that and on what we know about miscarriage in terms of the causes, which, by the way, is not nearly enough, but that's a conversation for another day. And then after, if we have time, I'm going to be talking about a typical fertility diet and what's actually meant by that. So we all know that a Mediterranean diet is like that's the gold standard, but none of us here are likely to just wake up one morning and start, having paella for lunch and just changing all of our eating habits. So I'm actually going to break down what is meant when we say a Mediterranean diet. So, how do we go from having toast in the morning, soup from the sandwich shop at lunch, mince and tatties for dinner, to a more Mediterranean based diet and still eat the foods that we like? So, I'm going to break that down a little bit as well. Because one of my biggest goals is to take the mystery out of it. Okay, so I will be checking the comments for some absolutely bubba bonkers reason. I don't see the comments here on my desktop, so I will need to check that on my phone, but that's fine. We can do that. We can do that. And yeah, let's get going. So this week, as we know, is National Infertility Awareness Week. It started on Monday and it's running through until Sunday. And I thought this would be a really useful time to share some statistics around infertility. If you are in, the crux of it, it can often feel quite isolating, and it can often feel like nobody understands and you're the only one going through that. And again, that is not because you are the only one going through it, and it is not because the world is out to get you. It's because as a society, we just don't talk about it enough. So my aim here, just through talking about some of the numbers involved and the awareness, is to help anyone who's watching this who is going through it to know that they're not alone. But I'm also hoping if anyone is watching this who is not going through infertility, that they also learn a little bit more about it as well. So, 1/3 of fertility issues are solely due to the women. Another 1/3 are solely due to the man's side. So, that's what we call male factor infertility. And then the remaining third is caused either by both or it can't be defined. So, this is one of the main things I like to talk about. Infertility is not a woman's problem. Infertility is a human problem. It is a problem that affects men just as much as it does women, and it is a problem that men are not in control of, but it is something that comes from the male side just as often as it comes from the female side. Now, granted, there are more ways that things can go a bit awry from the female side because, frankly, she's the one doing the hard work. She's the one that's ovulating. She's the one that's maintaining a menstrual cycle, usually giving up alcohol, all that good stuff. But the main thing that I like to bang a drum about when it comes to fertility is it affects women just as much as it affects men, and it comes from the man's side just as much as it comes from the women's side, or is undefined, and women should not feel responsible or solely responsible in a relationship. Believe me, of the many, many hundreds and thousands of women I've spoke to, nobody asks for this. Absolutely nobody asks for this, and nobody deserves this. So sometimes when you are in the pits, when you're in the trenches of infertility, it can really feel like, oh, this is my fault. This is because I used to smoke. This is because I used to go to the garage with my pals and get absolutely mad with it. No, this is not your fault. You did not ask for this. Even if you did ask for it, you can't just ask for infertility and get it. It's not a punishment. Please do not feel guilty. In terms of numbers here, 12.2% of women aged 15 to 49 have received infertility treatment. Now, I'm not sure if that's just here in the UK or in the States, but I think that is quite an interesting statistic as well. So that's what 1/8 of women. And then if we go back to, if we take it a step back even further, globally, 17.5% of the adult population experience infertility. So that's not just women, that's women and men, 17.5%. Okay? It affects around 1 in 6 people of reproductive age worldwide. And in the UK, that is 1 in 7 of heterosexual couples. So this is a topic that we do tend to shy away from. I don't feel gets talked about enough. And often there's just quite a bit of guilt around it and quite a bit of shame around it. But 1 in 6 heterosexual couples are struggling with infertility. So don't forget to be, sorry, 1 in 7. To be in that 1 of 7, you need to be in a heterosexual relationship and you need to be trying to conceive. Okay, so to qualify to be in that statistic, a few things need to be happening anyway. Let's not forget about the other people who are infertile or have issues but just don't know it because they're not trying yet. Okay, so here in the UK, the main causes of infertility are, as we talked about, unexplained infertility, which is when we just can't find the reason for it. We've confirmed ovulation, we've confirmed that the hormones are doing what they should do, the sperm's been tested. There isn't an obvious answer. Thereafter, there's 25% are caused by ovulatory disorders, and then on it goes. There's lots and lots of reasons. Now, I did see another really interesting statistic that I thought would kind of, yes, this is about help seeking patterns. So, for women who are struggling to conceive, but they are, how likely are they to go ask for help? A study by the National Institute of Health found that help seeking for infertility was more prevalent among women and men who were better educated in higher status occupations and who became parents later in life. So I also think this is a really, really key statistic around awareness as well. If you are better educated, if you are if you're working, if you're, out and about, you are more likely to have the confidence to go and ask for help. But what we need to realize is that there's a lot of people who just aren't asking for help because they don't know who to ask, or they don't know how, or they don't, they maybe don't have access to the internet. So the statistics that we've got here are what we know, but infertility itself is still surrounded by so much mystery, and a large, large percentage of people struggling with infertility will report feeling dismissed by their medical professionals. And this is something that I saw a great deal of, particularly during the virus. The virus was a one off event, hopefully, but doctors were just completely overwhelmed. And we're actually still seeing, years later, waiting lists being affected by the virus. So hopefully, some of these statistics have been interesting to you. And the key takeaway that I would love to kind of pass on here is, during this Infertility Awareness Week, if you are struggling, you're not alone. There's a lot of resources out there, and a lot of people, excuse me, a lot of people are here for you, and they want to talk to you, and they want to offer you support, and it is not your fault. This is not your fault. Okay? And if you are not struggling with infertility, if there's something you can do today or tomorrow just to help normalize conversations around fertility, around miscarriage, around IVF, don't force it out of someone that might not want to talk about it. But I really, really hope that we get to the stage one day where infertility is recognised for exactly what it is, which is a medical condition. It's not something to be ashamed of. It's heartbreaking. And it's the more we talk about it, the more we normalise it among ourselves, then the more likely we are to keep the conversation going, get it higher up on the list of priorities for the policymakers. Okay? So next we're going to move on to a Q&A, all right? So this one here, I'm just going to read it completely as it came, and this is from an anonymous member of the GGC. I'm experiencing my third loss, not sure if it's ectopic or a miscarriage at this stage, but I'm being monitored. My mind is spinning, and I think IVF may be our next step. I have no living children, and while I conceive relatively easily, I cannot carry the pregnancy beyond the first trimester. I had one pregnancy with a heartbeat that failed at 9 weeks. The second was an early miscarriage, and this one, which is inconclusive right now, at 6 weeks. I was on progesterone and aspirin for this pregnancy and had acupuncture every week leading up to conception. I stopped drinking caffeine and alcohol over a year ago, before my second pregnancy. I take all of the supplements that you should take for egg health and early pregnancy, and I eat as healthily as I ever have. I'm just not sure my body is up for it if it wasn't at 30, 34, 36. Is there anyone out there who was in a similar position who went the IVF route? Any positive stories after 3 losses? So please do, if you're willing and able, let us know what the outcome was of your, HGC and blood tests, and obviously keeping everything crossed that you're still pregnant and that this is a successful pregnancy for you. I'm going to answer this if towards the negative, because I know that's what you asked. So the first thing I would say in terms of IVF being the next step is to understand that IVF, while it's wonderful, IVF is a method to get you pregnant. IVF is where the sperm and the egg are put together outside of the body, and then they are put straight back into the body, so they're conceived in vitro. Yes, it can help improve chances of conceiving, but from what I've read, you aren't actually having such an issue with conceiving. You're having an issue staying pregnant. So with IVF, there is an option for what's called pre-genetic testing, PGT, and that's where any embryos are tested to see if they are viable, if their chromosomes are sorted properly, and that can indicate whether you are more or less likely to miscarry. However, it doesn't actually improve the chances. What it can, so say you were to get 10 embryos and you tested them and they could see how many were normal and how many were abnormal, they would therefore only use the normal ones. The abnormal ones would be discarded. In that case, yes, that can improve your chances of going full term and minimize the risk of miscarriage. However, that doesn't actually make it more likely that you will get more or that more will be genetically normal, if that makes sense. So IVF itself doesn't offer any additional protection from miscarriage unless you do pre-genetic testing, which can be quite expensive. I'm not entirely sure what circumstances, if it would be available on the NHS because you've experienced losses in the past. But typical IVF on its own, I don't particularly think is likely to make a massive difference here. I think if this does become a loss for you, that would obviously become your third loss, and it's time to enlist your GP, your doctor. If you have the facilities to go private, possibly look into that, but actually have your hormones tested. I can see you're already doing so many amazing things. So you're talking about egg health here, so I'm assuming you're taking CoQ10, you're already not taking alcohol, you're already not taking caffeine. So take a moment to be really proud of yourself for the things that you have done. And in terms of what to do next, I would look at your nutrition. You've mentioned here that you're eating healthier than you ever have. Make sure within that you're consuming enough protein and enough healthy fats. And when I talk about healthy fats, I mean plant-based fats, nuts, seeds, olive oil, avocado, salmon. The healthy fats are where it's at. That's what we want for getting our omegas in, but also for balancing out our hormones. Okay. Now, I would also possibly check if you're at a healthy BMI, then fantastic. Probably worth getting your thyroid checked. And if you are not at a healthy BMI, possibly look at applying a calorie deficit, but still keeping your nutrition really well balanced. So, not selling anything here at all, but obviously I've had to make some assumptions from your comments. So, if you watch this, and I will reply to your posts, if you watch this, please don't hesitate at all to reach out to me and we can arrange a completely free, no obligation consultation just to get into it in a little bit more detail. Okay? But I just want you to know that you're very much seen, and I really, really, really hope that you got the outcome you wanted from the HCG tests, and we're all kind of rooting for you here, and best of luck. The next, the next question I have is actually from a different group, but it is local to Glasgow, and it's anonymous as well. So I won't be giving away anyone's story or details. But this is such a good question. And when I saw it, I thought, yes, I'm going to answer that in the group, but I'm also going to paste it for the GGC live because it touches on so many things that are relevant. So again, I'm just going to read the question out word for word, and then I'll come to answering it, okay? She said here, I'm devastated and very confused at this point. I had a scan and the doctor told me that I have only one follicle, which can produce one egg or none. He immediately told me that I have a 1% chance to get pregnant through IVF with my own eggs and suggested donor eggs. I asked him about any medication that you're being given to trigger egg production, and he was very blunt and insensitive, telling me that I won't have enough and I would waste my time and money. I still have my AMH test to do, although he told me nothing will be different. I'm almost 44 and I understand that the chances are lower, but that was a huge punch in the face. And at the end, he said that my uterus is perfect for receiving donor eggs and in great condition to actually go through with the pregnancy and live birth. I don't know what I'm looking for here, just your experience, your advice, and any tips. Thank you in advance. So, this post really spoke to me. You can tell that this woman is just feeling really lost. She's actually used the analogy here. It was a huge punch in the face. And I thought for Infertility Awareness Week, this post was actually an excellent way to illustrate and demonstrate what women who are dealing with infertility are going through. And again, I just want to say that I'm here for you, and I'm sorry that the doctor has been so insensitive and left you feeling this way, especially whilst delivering what they would know is very difficult news for you to hear. So, the assumptions I'm going to make before answering this question is that you are going private. And the reason I'm making that assumption is that you've said in the comments you would be wasting your time and money. Okay, so I'm assuming that you've went straight for private treatment. You've also mentioned that you're 44, which I believe would kind of rule you out of IVF treatment. So you can work on egg quality. This is one of the things that I help my clients with. Working on egg quality improves the chances of conceiving, but it also kind of adds extra protection against miscarriage. But even in the absolute best case scenario, even if that was to double your chances, if there's only one follicle sitting there, then you need to have a really good think about whether going from 1% to 2% is going to be worth the effort and what you're going to put your body through. Now, I'm not a doctor, I'm not your doctor, and I'm not going to be the person that says you shouldn't do this because it's absolutely your choice. An AMH test is going to test your anti-Müllerian hormone. So that's going to test how well you're likely to react to stimulation medication. And this stimulation medication is what you were referring to when you were talking about, triggering the egg production. If there's only one follicle sitting there in the first place, then even stimulating that, the chances aren't great, I'm afraid. And I think that your doctor could have went about telling you this in a much nicer way and could have explained to you a bit better. But the follicle needs to grow and develop before it can, essentially burst and become a healthy egg. And the kind of rule of thumb that I normally go with my clients, and this is totally just based on experience. This isn't a statistic or anything like that. Normally, if my clients get, say, 10 follicles, I would say to them, okay, expect around 5 eggs. I can be quite conservative, but I usually say go on a kind of 50% chance because some will die, they won't make it through the process. So while in some ways I can understand why your doctor, I think your doctor in their own way is trying to be kind by telling you what they think and presenting you with the facts. It is very heartbreaking to hear. And STIMS medication, unfortunately, STIMS medication isn't going to create more follicles. It can just grow and encourage the ones that are there. So the next thing I wanted to touch on is using donor eggs. So I've worked with a lot of women who have used donor eggs, and donor eggs, I actually know humans who have been conceived through donor eggs, and they have a very special place in my heart. Typically, when I'm working with people, the last thing they will consider is donor eggs. And that's one thing, by the way, just before I move on to talking about donor eggs. This is your journey and you are paying for it privately. You absolutely have the right to try to do IVF with that one follicle or wait a few months, see if you can, improve the egg quality. This is your journey and you can do whatever you want to do. But please try your best to keep your mind open to donor eggs. I know we all dream about having our own baby and conceiving our own child, and where our head goes when someone talks about donor eggs is, oh, but it's not mine. But that is your baby. This is a baby that you will still carry in your body, feed, love, clothe. It will genetically be your partner's as well if you're having it with a partner. But don't forget as well the legal aspect of it as well. Even if you use donor eggs, because you have carried and delivered that baby is legally, you are absolutely that baby's mummy. Okay? And when you're at the start of a journey or even the middle of a journey, it can really, really feel difficult to swallow as soon as someone says donor eggs. And I get that, okay? But donor eggs very much have a place. And yeah, I'm not saying that that's what your journey is going to be, but maybe just keep your mind open and maybe ask around some of the forums for women who have experience using donor eggs. And all the very, 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 very best of luck to you. Okay. So the next thing I wanted to talk about, and again, we're looking at break down barriers here. We're looking to remove taboos. Before I go on to talk in greater detail about miscarriage, let me please just check if there's any comments, because my good old laptop, okay, I don't even think I'm actually live. Yeah, let's go on with this anyway. Okay, so miscarriage versus chemical pregnancy. These are very, very difficult subjects, and if I seem somewhat hard and uncaring about it, please know that I'm absolutely not. But I do talk to women every day about miscarriage, about chemical pregnancy, and it's my job to kind of get them through. Oh my God, look at the state of my hair. It's my job to get them through a very, very difficult time. So let's start with a chemical pregnancy. A chemical pregnancy is still very much a loss. It's still a loss of a pregnancy. It's still a loss of a child. It's still a loss of a future that you had been looking forward to. A chemical pregnancy is defined as a pregnancy that has been lost before it has been confirmed as viable. So before there's been a blood test or there's been a heartbeat detected, and it's typically before the 5 week mark. So it's thought that around 50% of chemical pregnancies aren't even detected because they just fall away. And very often the woman, she might not be trying, she might be trying, but she might not even have tested yet. And what they believe is a menstrual cycle is actually a chemical pregnancy. Now, in my world with my clients who are trying to conceive, it's quite unusual for them to have a chemical and not know it, because most of my girls are testing really regularly and they know their menstrual cycle back to front. Now, with a chemical pregnancy, well, there's many issues, of course, but one of the big issues is that the NHS doesn't treat it as a pregnancy. So if you lose that pregnancy, it won't go on your record as a miscarriage. And to get help with fertility, the NHS typically ask for you to either have been trying for a year plus if you're under 35, 6 months plus if you're over 35, or have had at least 3 miscarriages. So you can imagine if you're in a scenario where you're able to conceive, you're able to get a positive pregnancy test every month or every couple of months, But because you can't stay pregnant and because the pregnancy isn't lasting long enough to be confirmed as viable to be scanned, then that's not going on her record as a miscarriage, and then she's missing out on that help. So what I always say is make sure whether it's an actual medical miscarriage or not, or whether it's a chemical, make sure that you do call your doctor, make sure that you ask your doctor to mark in your notes. And every single time, if this is happening to you recurrently, advocate for yourself. Go to your doctor, tell them I think there's an issue here, I need testing, I need help, I need my progesterone checked, something is happening. Okay, please never ever be scared. Advocate for yourself. I know a lot of us here in Glasgow, especially kind of working class people like myself, we've been brought up not to question the doctor. What the doctor says is always right. But do not ever hesitate, please, to advocate for yourself and really push for further testing. Okay. So we've talked about a chemical. A miscarriage is actually when a pregnancy or a baby is lost later. Okay, and that's typically after the 5 week mark. And these happen very, very, very regularly. Okay, the most common known cause for miscarriage is abnormal difficulties or chromosomal abnormalities. God, I need more coffee, obviously. Chromosomal abnormalities. Okay, this is known to be the most common known reason for miscarriage. Now, before I go any further into that, we need to kind of get it out there that not nearly enough is known about miscarriage. So studying miscarriage is actually very, very difficult because it's a difficult subject anyway. Getting enough kind of test subjects together. If you're just trying to have a baby and if you're really excited about all of this, it's very unlikely that you're going to want to be involved in a test that's to do with miscarriage, having regular blood tests. Similarly, though, as far as I'm aware, there's not nearly enough money being spent actually studying miscarriage. So there's kind of two issues here. One is with the interest to actually look into it, but the other is with how do you actually do that? But I can only work with what we do know. Okay. So when it comes to chemicals and when it comes to miscarriage, more than half of pre 12-week miscarriages are due to chromosomal abnormalities. Okay. Now that is where the chromosomes don't sort in the right order, they don't match up properly in the 3 months leading up to ovulation, and there can be any number of chromosomal errors. The most common one that we know of course, is trisomy 21, Down syndrome, but there are many, many, many more. And a lot of the time, it just results in a pregnancy not being viable and a woman miscarrying. Now, a lot of people believe that the main cause of miscarriage is actually low progesterone. And I talk to my clients about progesterone a great deal. But what's quite important to understand with progesterone is low progesterone is more often than not, it's a symptom of miscarriage rather than a cause of miscarriage. Okay, so again, I'm talking very, very broad here because we have very limited, viable, kind of well studied information on it. And yes, very, very often women who have suffered from kind of recurrent miscarriage can take baby aspirin, progesterone, all under their doctor's supervision, by the way, and that can lead to a healthy pregnancy. But the low progesterone typically isn't the cause, it's the symptom. Okay, the main reason tends to be chromosomal abnormalities, and that's where we come right the way back round to working on egg quality. If we have better quality of eggs, then we have more chance that we will conceive and less chance that we will miscarry. So by working on egg quality, I'm talking about protecting yourselves from the chemicals that you're exposed to, eating a well balanced diet, keeping yourself hydrated, nourishing your eggs with the right supplements at the right time in the right quantity. I've seen I've seen online very, very regularly, or I've worked with women who are paying something like £80 a month for very bougie, very pretty fertility supplements. And when you actually look into what they're taking, it is basically a multivitamin with folate added. You can buy folate really cheaply, and then it says on the packet with CoQ10. So CoQ10, or ubiquinol as we call it, that tends to be the more expensive of the supplements for fertility. So it'll say on the packet it's got CoQ10, and then when you actually look at it, there's only like 30 micrograms or 30 milligrams going in there. So not even half of what they really, really need. You do not need to spend a fortune to work on egg quality. If you're not able to enlist coaching, if you don't want to enlist coaching, the best place I can suggest you start is to buy the book It Starts with the Egg by Rebecca Fett. Yes, it is quite dry, but it is science backed. She references all of the studies that she's referring to in there, so it's not just kind of pie in the sky, her opinion bullshit, and she gives you numbers, okay? A lot of my coaching, a lot of the information that I dish out to my clients comes from this book. Okay, so I'm not saying that you need to work with me or any coach for that matter to improve your egg quality. Anything that I tell my clients to do can be found online. But what I would say is the opposite can also be found online. And what I actually help my clients with is the how. But not everybody needs help with the how. Just make sure that if you're looking in the right places for the what. So It Starts with an Egg is a great place to start. I've got so much free content out there as well. Also follow an amazing, amazing Instagram account. It's Dr. Natalie Crawford. She is fantastic, and everything that she shares is completely science backed, and she has an absolute skill for explaining really, really complex subjects in a way that you can just take it in. Okay, so I've totally deviated, as I always do, from my point, but egg quality can be improved. That can lead to less chance of miscarriage and baby loss. Yes, you can work with people like myself or many other women, by the way, but yes, you can do it yourself if you don't need help with the how, and if you are quite good at keeping yourself accountable and motivated, then the information is out there. Just be very, very careful to avoid the conflicting bullshit information that's out there too. Okay. Right, let's move on to more fun stuff, because I know this has been a really, really heavy subject. So thank you if you're still here. Next, we're going to move on to the Mediterranean diet. So my big thing is I have clients who read, oh, I need to do the Mediterranean diet because that's the best thing for fertility. And they therefore think that they need to wake up and have, a continental breakfast, and then they need to have, I don't know, salmon every day, and they need to have paella, and they have to have all of the really kind of fancy foods that we like to have while we're on holiday. So let me just share my screen here. Please tell me it is letting me share my screen. Do. Settings, distribution, no. Stream. Nope, I can't press the screen share button. Okay, back to where we were then. If you were to just go into Google Images and Google a Mediterranean diet, you would be smacked in the face with the most gorgeous pictures of quite elaborate looking, quite expensive looking meals. Okay. What I want to get across to anyone watching this is that the Mediterranean diet is excellent for fertility because of the nutrients that it delivers. Okay. And it is possible to adapt a Western diet to deliver these sort of nutrients without completely upending everything you're eating. Okay, so yeah, wouldn't it be nice if we were like Oprah and we had a chef in our house and we could just make a phone call and say, as of tomorrow, I'm eating all Mediterranean, and they could worry about it and they could shop for it and you would know that it's all going to be delicious. It's all going to be absolutely fantastic. But real life, that's not going to happen. So if we look at it actually on a nutrient level, this is what's came from Google on a Mediterranean diet, okay? Healthy eating pattern with a Mediterranean diet emphasizes plant-based foods like fruits, vegetables, legumes, nuts, whole grains, moderate amounts of fish, poultry, eggs, and dairy, and smaller amounts of red meat. It also includes olive oil as the main source of fat and allows for moderate consumption of wine with meals. Okay, so that's just straight off of Google AI overview. If we look at the macronutrients, so macro just means big. Okay, so macronutrients in any diet are proteins, carbohydrates, fats. Okay, so let's start with the carbohydrates. A typical Western diet, carbohydrates are likely to be quite high in white starchy carbs. So white bread, potatoes, even things like pasta, and then our ultra processed foods, things like sugar, crisps, things that are, really not that good for us. Whereas in a Mediterranean diet, they still consume those carbohydrates, but they just have the whole versions of them. Okay. So while we might have white bread, they would have whole grain bread. While we might have quite a lot of potatoes, they might have more beans, okay, which are substantially higher in fiber. They typically eat much, much, much more vegetables than us, okay? So if we look at a normal meal that we're having, how can we just make dead easy swaps to make this on a macro level more Mediterranean based? So first thing you can do, much more vegetables. Think about your normal meal. You might have a small little portion of salad at the side, or you might have, one of those steam bags of vegetables and think you're doing great. Double the veg. Double the vegetables you're having. Fill up on veg. Get that fiber in. These are carbohydrates, but they are good carbohydrates. They're carbohydrates that are slow release, they are full of fiber. And when we're having those starchy carbs, select the ones that our body is going to work harder to process. Okay, so if you're shopping for bread, go for whole grain bread, go for pumpernickel bread. It's still bread, it's still delicious, it's still satisfying. Your body's just going to work harder to break that down so that you're going to have less of an insulin spike. Okay. Next, let's look at proteins. Okay, so the proteins that you would typically see in a Mediterranean diet, we've mentioned here fish, poultry, eggs, and dairy, smaller amounts of red meat. The other thing that's typical in a Mediterranean diet, though, is that these proteins are minimally or not at all processed. Okay. So, for example, if I was to say to a client, why don't you have some chicken for dinner? An excellent option for that would be some chicken breast, either in a sauce or a seasoning. But very often, if a client hears that, like just a typical Western woman, no tea, no shade here, no shade at all. But I've had clients where I've said, right, try some chicken for dinner tonight instead of processed beef burgers, and they go out, and because this is how they've been brought up or how they've been used to eating, they'll buy like processed goujons. So that's processed chicken, but it's also covered in bread, and it's actually probably more of a carb source than it is a protein source. And I'm not shitting on anyone here. This is how I used to live as well. Okay, so like please know that there's no shade. But in a Mediterranean diet, things are minimally processed. So it's a nice piece of fish, maybe cooked in some olive oil, some lemon juice. It's not a piece of fish that has been battered, deep fried, taken out, cooled down, frozen, wrapped, put in a box, and put in a freezer shop. Okay. And I know that this can work out more expensive, or it probably sounds more expensive than the way that we're eating just now, but it really doesn't have to be. If we just work on one meal at a time and just bag, right, this is what I'm going to have for breakfast. I'm not going to have white toast for breakfast anymore, or I'm not going to skip breakfast. I'm going to have some lovely Greek yogurt, and I'm going to have some berries, some seeds, some nuts. Work on that, sit there for a week, and then before you know it, that's a habit. Okay, and then we move on to lunches, and we can't expect ourselves to just switch overnight like this. It's just not reasonable, but we can work on one thing at a time. And the best place most of us can do that is with our protein intake, so the amount of protein we're consuming, and also the type of protein we're consuming. And by that, I mean consuming actually low processed or minimally processed proteins that are actually protein sources. So not, over processed with loads of carbs and loads of fats. Talking of fats, this is one of the biggest differences from a Mediterranean diet to a typical Western diet. You'll remember the Google definition that I gave earlier. The Mediterranean diet includes olive oil as the main source of fat, and it allows for, yeah, we'll move on to that in a minute. So the main source of fat in a Mediterranean diet is olive oil. Now, for a fertility diet, you don't necessarily need to have olive oil as your main source of fats, but you do really want to be having good fats. And by that, I mean plant-based fats, okay? Avocado, nuts, real nuts, not peanuts, nuts, seeds, oily fish, all of these things are so good for us, and they can actually help to lower cholesterol. And I know that's not the conversation we're having right now, but they're excellent for nourishing our eggs, balancing our hormones, keeping us full, and so much better an option than, deep fried foods, or even, like, I love my cheese. I'm not going to tell you to give up cheese. Cheese is important in anyone's life, but please enjoy it sparingly. When you're selecting cuts of meat, please select the leaner cuts. And I'm not saying that that's to get your fats down. I'm saying that's so that you can save your fats to add back in these lovely, healthy, nutritious, just brilliant, healthy plant-based fats. Okay? So if you are trying to conceive, and if you don't feel you need any more help, but you're just looking to kind of adopt or look into a Mediterranean diet, please know that this doesn't necessarily mean you need to start eating your dinner at 10 o'clock at night and eating like, a Spanish person or a Greek person. Just think about it on a macro level. Macronutrients, think about the carb choices, the fat choices, and the protein choices, and pick one meal at a time and swap it out. Hopefully that's doable. Once you've picked one, once you've picked an alternative for it, do it for a week and then change something else over. Then change something else over. Okay? Please don't try and get yourself to, please don't try to eat foods that you know you don't like. When I was younger, I absolutely hated mushrooms. I actually love them now, but if someone was to put mushrooms in front of me, it would just instantly turn me off. When you're looking to change the patterns of how you eat, stick to the things you know you like. Make it easy to succeed, make it hard to fail. If you know that you don't like mushrooms, don't try and include mushrooms. Just find another vegetable, find another something so that you can actually do it. Okay? Okay, my darlings, I have been Claire Innes. I am the Fertility Mentor. I want everyone who's struggling with infertility, miscarriage, baby loss to know that you're seen and that you're loved, and I'm here for you. And thank you so much for listening. Have an awesome day. Bye.